Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. And welcome to my podcast, The Devil and the Deep Blue Me. And I am your host, Rich Bruck. And I am certainly glad that you're here. Thank you so much for joining me this week. We've been talking a lot about relationships, from choosing your battles to the art of disappointing people. And this week's topic, well, it feels like the next logical step in that little journey. It's about something that just happens very quietly, sometimes sadly, and sometimes with a sense of peace. It's when friends become strangers. And man, that's a tough pill to swallow when you're younger. But it's just part of the deal. I had a moment recently just scrolling through an old photo album in the kind of, with actual prints. and I saw this picture of a group of us, probably from late teens, early 20s. Everybody's smiling, arms around each other, probably at some dive bar or maybe even at a band practice. I couldn't really tell. And I looked at it and I realized I haven't spoken to half those people in years, like genuinely years. And it wasn't because of a fight, not because of some dramatic falling out. It was just life. Different paths, different priorities, different cities. And it's a weird feeling to look at a picture of people who were once really your entire world, and now they're just echoes, strangers in a way. And it got me thinking about how much we expect friendships to be, permanent fixtures in our lives, especially when we're younger. You think your core group from high school or college they'll be with you forever. And that's generally the narrative. That's how we think. The unbreakable bond. And for some people, it's true. But for a lot of us, it's not. And for a long time, I used to feel a real sense of failure about that. Like if a friendship drifted, it was somehow my fault. Or a sign that maybe I hadn't invested enough into it. But what I know now is that it's often really nobody's fault at all. It's just a natural part of growing and evolving as a human being. When I was younger, I really didn't understand the fluidity of relationships. It felt like, once you were friends, that was it. Set in stone. Especially in the band world anyway. You're spending all of your time together, rehearsing, touring in a van, sharing hotel rooms, living in each other's pockets, basically. And those bonds, they become incredibly intense and incredibly fast. You're living this shared dream, and you're fighting the same battles, and you're sacrificing for the same goal. When I was that sidekick in a band, supporting, other singers, my bandmates they were my family. We were in the trenches together. But then things change. The band breaks up, or someone moves, or you just grow in different directions. I remember after one particular band had dissolved, I found myself adrift. I had built so much of my identity around that shared experience, and suddenly the common ground, it was gone. I mean, we tried to keep up, of course, phone calls, let's grab a beer sometime, those kind of promises, but the conversations just started feeling forced. The inside jokes, they didn't land the same way. The energy, it wasn't there. And slowly, almost those people who knew my deepest secrets and shared my wildest dreams, they just became names on a social media feed. People that I'd root for from a distance but no longer interact with. For a long time, that it really felt like a loss, a failure, a mourning. Like I had done something wrong or they had. And what I wish I knew then was that it's perfectly normal, even healthy, for relationships to have a lifespan. Not every connection is meant to be a permanent fixture in your life. And that doesn't diminish the value it had when it was vibrant. Those friendships, they served a purpose during a specific season of your life. They helped you grow. They taught you things. They made you laugh and they made you cry. And then sometimes their purpose is just fulfilled. And that's okay. I see this a lot with my students, actually, especially the younger ones in their late teens or even in their early 20s. They come in heartbroken because their best friend from high school is suddenly prioritizing something different. They're going off to, a different college, or they're getting into a different scene, or just developing different interests. And they ask me, what do I do? How do I fix that? And what I wish I could tell them was, what I try to convey is that sometimes there's nothing to fix. It's not a broken thing. It's just a changing thing. You can hold on to those memories and you can appreciate the time you had and you can wish them well without needing to force a connection that no longer naturally fits. It's kind of like outgrowing a favorite t-shirt. It was perfect for a time and you loved it. It saw you through a lot, but eventually it just doesn't fit anymore. You don't hate the shirt. You don't blame the shirt. You just acknowledge that you've moved on. And it makes space for new, perfectly fitting shirts or new, perfectly fitting friendships. So the reflection here is this. Give yourself permission to let friendships evolve naturally. Don't cling to what was out of fear of what isn't. Be grateful for the chapter that they shared with you, and then, with kindness and understanding, allow the story to continue. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for a friendship is to gracefully just let it go. All right. Shifting gears from the poignant to the delightfully absurd. Here are some random facts that I stumbled upon for this week's segment of enrichment. And maybe they'll make you feel better about the fleeting nature of things. Who knows? But did you know that honey never spoils? Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that are over 3,000 years old and still perfectly edible. So while friendships might fade, honey has always got your back. The shortest war in history lasted only 38 to 45 minutes. It was between Britain and Zanzibar in 1896. So, talk about choosing your battles. No time for a long, drawn-out conflict there. And a jiffy is an actual unit of time. It's the time it takes for light to travel 1 centimeter in a vacuum, which is roughly, and I had to write this down, 1/300 millionth of a second. I'll just double check that. That's 3, 6, 7, 8 zeros. So the next time someone says, "I'll be there in a jiffy," you know that they mean really fast, faster than a friendship can sometimes fade, I guess. And before erasers were invented, people used breadcrumbs to remove pencil marks. So, technically, your friendship could be like breadcrumbs, useful for a time, and then it's gone. Okay, maybe that one wasn't so delightful. Let's stick to honey. Anyway, there is your dose of things you probably didn't need to know, but now you do. And then this week's little musical check-in. I've been messing around with a new song idea this week, and it's got this kind of bittersweet driving rock feel. It's got a main riff that feels a bit like a road trip, and I'm calling it Empty Passenger Seat for now. That's its scratch title. It's not necessarily about a romantic relationship. It's more about the spaces left when people move on in life. The metaphorical empty seats in your metaphorical vehicle. It's got that rock energy, but with a layer of introspection, which feels very me lately. Anyway, it's still very, very much in the demo phase, and so far it's feeling good. And, you know, it's funny how music can capture these complex feelings. And speaking of things I'm working on, you can always check out all of my music on your favorite streaming platform, whatever that might be. And once again, I hope you find something that you like. All right then. So when friends become strangers, it's a tough one, but it's a reality of life. The thing I wish I knew then was that it doesn't mean you have failed or they have failed. It just means life has happened, and that's okay. Cherish the moments you had and make room for new connections that will inevitably come your way. And that's it for this week's. Thank you very much for joining me. And until next time, have yourself a safe and happy week.